Hello, good evening, and welcome everybody to the next episode of Adding Zeros. With Adding Zeros, we are committed to bring you the top-notch content and the understanding which will help you to make better investing decisions. Today, it's a very, very special topic. Uh, Over the years, we've been hearing out that India needs the engineering revolution. We need to manufacture in India. We've been hearing terms like Make in India and Make for India. And for the longest time, we've been hearing that India requires a huge boom in infrastructure, being a geographically very, very large country. And there is always a stop-start mechanism for the Capex cycle in India. There are so many questions with this Capex cycle, with when this whole infra boom will happen. There is a whole gamut of things that we need to cover and need to understand this. So today we are going to attempt to understand, are we amidst the engineering revolution in India? Are the next 10 years looking very bright versus the last 7? So to speak about these topics, I have very, very special guests today. We have Mr. M.S Unnikrishnan with us. He is the ex-managing director and CEO of Thermax Group, a 16,000 crore market cap energy and environment solutions company. Under Mr. Unnikrishnan's leadership, the company has flourished with global presence, and it operates in areas of heating, cooling, power, water, waste management, air pollution, chemicals. He's covered a huge gamut of different sectors and got a rich experience under his belt. Right now, he's the CEO of IITB-Monash Research Academy, a major Australian-Indian research collaboration formed between India's top-ranked IIT Bombay and Monash University. Unni has, as he's affectionately called, has also held several important positions in industry and the regulatory landscape of India. He's been associated with the CII, where he was the chairman of CII's National Committee for Capital Goods and a member of the subcommittee of the erstwhile Planning Commission of India for preparing technology development path for the country. He's also been instrumental in helping shape policy decisions such as the performance-linked incentive scheme, a much talked about scheme that we are hearing. Also the development of heavy industry in India, and also enabling civilian nuclear agreement between India and USA. For the last few quarters and years, he's been focused in developing the budding startup ecosystem in India, especially in the industrial sector. And Unni brings the perfect blend of deep hands-on experience and the knowledge required for the Indian industry to unravel this mystery about India's Capex cycle. I also have Mr. Charanjit Singh with us. Charan is an analyst and a fund manager with more than 16 years under his belt in this industry. And he joined DSP Investment Managers in September 2018. And he's worked with BNK Securities earlier, Axis Capital, BNP Paribas in various capacities. He holds an MBA and also a BTech in Electronics and Communication. He's been managing DSP's engineering fund called the Infrastructure Growth and Economic Reforms Fund, the Tiger Fund. A very warm welcome to both of you, Unni and to Charan. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Sahil.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let me set the stage here with what we are going to discuss. And one very large data point which comes to mind is that in another year or so, by FY23, India will do about $1 trillion in gross fixed capital formation, or GFCF as we call it. It's a very large number, right? There are only 17 countries which have a GDP bigger than this. And rest of all the countries are even smaller than what India's GFCF could be in the next 2 years. And that too every year. And when you look at how many countries have done this kind of GFCF in a year, there are not even a dozen countries. And when I go back and look at various cycles, the best cycle for India's investments was between FY05 to FY08, where we did about 22% on an average in terms of growth for fixed capital formation. And India has done it in the past. We've seen the full cycle, if you remember, between FY4 and FY12. We grew on an average at 17%. And I think that is the cycle that most people remember, the big Capex cycle that India saw. And every time there is a mention of Capex or of an engineering boom, people go and refer to that. But let me jog your memory. Between FY80 and FY01, not many people know, but India actually did 16% growth on an average in this whole period on gross fixed capital formation. So there are in fact two big cycles of GFCF in India. But what has happened after FY12, we've done only 6.5% on an average growth between this period. There has been a lot of starts, a lot of stops. And it seems that there is a consensus which has got built that it's too tough for India to go back to the old growth rates. So I'm not sure how it will look like, but I think there is certainly a debate whether the old cycles were more durable or this is more durable. And I'm going to probably ask a lot of questions to both of my experts and try to unravel this mystery and understand this better. So as I said earlier, the only point of reference we generally have is the Capex cycle in the noughties between 2003, 4 to 7, 8. And every time we see a hint, we go back to that period. But let me first, put some contours to our discussion. And I want to start with you, Unni, here first. I want you to define what is Capex cycle. How do we understand this? There are a lot of definitions, but how do we understand what the Capex cycle is? And if you can put some boundaries around this. Over to you.
Yeah. See, the classical way of understanding a Capex cycle for a specific economy or a geography is you got installed capacity for various sectors in the economy. And the consumption pattern all of a sudden starts increasing with money availability, purchasing power of the consumer goes up, and there are sources of income happening in a substantial way. I would say an example which you mentioned about post-2001 Y2K, when we have seen the IT revolution of India, where India came into the global landscape, a lot of youngsters started earning a lot of money, and that started the cycle of consumption. And the existing capacity started becoming insufficient. And that has also forced a lot of Indian industrialists to set up private capex. More and more capacity is being set up. Now, in various sectors, the cycle will be short-lived, may have a spurt in between. For example, an FMCG company, the gestation period from the placement of an order to commercial production is anywhere from an 8 months, maybe an 18 months. Whereas for a cement industry, it could be those days in the last cycle was almost between a 3 years minimum to maybe a 4 years. A steel company that time with a million TPA to 3 million TPA kind of capacity range would have been minimum 4 years going all the way to 6 to 7 years. And the thermal power plant, those days the evolution have started slowly of a supercritical kind of a capacity. It was taking something almost not less than 6 years, can go all the way to 7, 8 years. So the cycle is a combination of all this put together where there is a consistency being visible. And mind you, the FMCG kind of capacities can get exhausted very quickly, whereas a power plant or a cement plant will take a little longer time for it to be reaching to the fructification of the full-scale utilization of the capacity. So a cycle is nothing but when there is this kind of consumption going up, existing capacity is getting utilized and new investment happens. And unfortunately or fortunately, across the globe, you go through any cycle in the world, it is a cluster of investment in the same cycle. Not that only one cement company will invest. All of them who are in the economy will start investing. All steel will do that. So that is why it is not as a cycle. So that's just about general understanding of that.
Got that. So largely its consumption drives, capacity utilization levels. And once you reach a threshold, you have to do more investments, to create excess capacity and meet that consumption. So that's how this cycle goes on, starts and stops. So Unni, if we go back to the same example of the last cycle, we saw there was a huge cycle across many, many sectors. It was like a wave, all the sectors moving together, which is unlike, let's say, a 1980 to 2000 cycle, which had very different kind of levers over time. One sector doing well, the other not doing well. What do you think? Is this cycle different that we are seeing right now? First of all, do you think there is a beginning of a cycle per se where we stand today? And if it is, how different is this from the last one?
I would say that last cycle was quite unscientific. It's a kind of word I can utilize because generally it's a frog mentality of setting up capacity to ensure that I am also investing without having a scientific study done about the market for the specific location where the factory is or maybe capacity is getting created. Will there be consumption? It is just about everybody was investing. And so that is why I mentioned about it. It's not a totally a prediction done in terms of market study done properly and what should be the capacity individually. It is a catch up, and I want to be leading the market equivalent of that. And everybody jumped into the bandwagon without knowing what is the size of the pocket. Will they be able to sustain it? It's not only one capacity; they're going to multiply it also progressively, all put together. So, which has created the negativity. Which is unfortunately for India, there were two reasons. One is that uncontrolled investment in each of the sectors without realizing will you really need that much of capacity at that point of time, or could they have deferred some of them? So the payback became an issue. Second, the globe also went through the Lehman collapse of 2008. So which created a banking crisis, which somehow we are yet to be overcoming, but at least, so that is why there had been a negative thereafterwards in the cycle. So coming back to that, are we at the cusp of a new cycle is a question that you asked about. Absolutely right. Because whatever is in and COVID apart, even prior to COVID, we had been slowing down as an economy. But our consumption hasn't come down. COVID has, of course, brought it down. But the moment post-COVID era is going to be evolving, which is likely to be between 12 to 18 month period of now where it will be a forgotten thing. As such, Indian industry has forgotten about it. I would say that we are almost at pre-COVID levels. But I'm not Indian population and will also come to that kind of a level. In my opinion, we are already on a positive cycle because the underlying things have already started, which may not be known to the market. Capacity finalizations are already happening. Capacity building is happening across various sectors. And the rest of them who have not done it will also start doing it going forward. So we are already, I would say, at the initial part of the next cycle. And it could quite be a very fairly longer cycle where it will have a lot more of scientific element, which is missing in the last cycle, is my take on this.
Sure. So I pick up 2-3 things from here from what you said only right now, that in the last cycle, we probably overdid investments, without thinking too much or giving it a lot of thought. And it also took a very long time. The cycle was 11, 12 years. And that created some excess capacity. And it took maybe 9-10 years to work it off and where we stand today. Another important point which I picked up from you, which also correlates with some macro data, is that prior to COVID, only consumption was supporting India's economy. Most other parts of the economy were subdued, just like investments, we were not doing much. And once consumption picks up, which we are probably witnessing some sign, this part of the economy will also pick up. So these two very critical points also reflected in, for example, how personal loan growth happened before COVID, all point to what you said right now. Very, very important takeaways. Thanks for that. Charan, I want to come to you on the next question. What do you think are the key ingredients? As Unni said, that this could be a longer cycle, more thoughtful in nature, where thought is given to what we are doing. So what do you think are the key ingredients for the upcycle if it is beginning now?
Yeah, thanks, Sahil. So if you look at, the data and go back to the previous cycle, investments as a percentage of GDP, what we have seen is already bottoming out in FY21 at around 27%. What we had seen similar kind of number in 2000s. And we had seen a peaking of this number in FY07 to almost around 37% levels. When we look at the 15 years of data, what were the enablers for the Capex cycle to revive? First is in terms of the macros, positive macro. Like Unni mentioned, banks' balance sheets have now become more stronger. NPAs have come down. Second aspect, in terms of corporate tax rate cut, has been very significant and a game changer thing where new manufacturing capacities will have to pay only 15% tax rate. Thirdly, in terms of the cost of funding, now which is at 2 decades low. The other aspect, if we look at the previous cycle, was reforms. Reforms, especially in the case of Electricity Act, which led to significant power sector reforms. Similarly, in this cycle, we have seen GST as a big reform, which has led to formalization of economy. We are seeing power distribution sector going through a big reform, RERA for the real estate side, and PLI incentives, which is coming from the manufacturing perspective, and lastly, for the labor reforms. What we are seeing is even state governments offering various incentives to bring in investments. Lastly, if you look at the government is also committed to start the cycle by increasing their Capex by 22% in FY22 and committing to the national infrastructure pipeline for 100 lakh crores, which is almost 2 times what we have done over FY13 to 19 of 50 lakh crores. So there's a good buildup of spending also happening from the government side.
Sure. So, Charan, if I got you correctly, you are mentioning cost of capital is a big lever, which is at a multi-year low. Second, you are citing government policies, which are important for this cycle to kickstart, because generally government is counter-cyclical in nature. And we'll go back to the private sector again, but because Charan is mentioning these points, Unni, I want to come to you and ask you a few very important questions about the drivers. We've heard enough about how government policies are very important and big enablers for this whole cycle to pick up, the Capex cycle and the engineering revolution. What do you think are the key policies? If I may cite, let's say, the performance-linked incentive, you've been a part of all these deliberations, and particularly the monetization program. How do you think these kind of policies can change the complexion of where we stand today?
I would say that the one thing which possibly Charan missed out in the policy, I'll come to PLI first,
sure.
But prior to that is the Land Reforms Act and Land Acquisition Act, which has come into being, which is pending for so many years, decades, let me say that way. So one of the major constraints of capacity building in the country for commodities size, where very large plants had to be set up. See, acquiring a 5-acre land, 10-acre land was very easy in the country. But to build a highway, build an airport, to build maybe a port, or to say a large factory which is needing maybe 1,000 acres to be acquired, was not an easy task. So that got settled by almost 2012. And then it has taken maybe a couple of years for it to be operationalizing it. Today it's very operational. You will never hear about this as a problem. That's point number one. Second, one more thing I need to say. In the last cycle, a predominant part of the investment was maybe going into only the almost developed, industrially developed states of the country, which were 2.5 of the southern states, Maharashtra and Gujarat, let's say that. Right. That is predominantly the suction pull factor for the investment destinations of the country. But the cycle that is going to pick up has got many more claimants. Both the Andhras, that is, the Telangana and AP, they've got land bank available aplenty and very cheap, and they are very, very industrial friendly. I'm telling you, all others who are there in the first cycle are going to be remaining. Uttar Pradesh has now come out with substantial incentives, land bank available, and encouraging a lot more happening. Madhya Pradesh, in the last cycle towards the second half, they have gone into a high drive and stability, their land available, cheap available, a lot more labor availability put together. So what had happened to China in the Hu Jintao era in terms of each of the provinces or the governments, they competing against each other and attracting people is going to be the next cycle's fundamentals in my think. So it is the centers policies, states attraction and competing against each other. Because I'm so happy to say, even the regional political leaders, not the central parties, are today aware of the fact that creating wealth means investment. Creating jobs mean investment. And they coming in will also help them to get higher tax collection, which will mean they'll have more money at their disposal to do what they want to do for their state. So this is not the way it used to be. I'm talking about 10 years, 15 years, 20 years back. Things are totally changed. That's number one. Second, very quickly to talk about all the things that is spoken about by you in terms of the various government schemes come in. PLI is the most important one. It is only a starting point. See, the reason for the PLI to be introduced may not be spoken in public by everybody is about $160 to $180 billion trade imbalance that our country has got.
Absolutely.
So all the money that we earn through the IT sector or maybe export, it gets eaten away in a couple of areas, and it is very clearly understood where we have gone wrong. And we accept it. India was not ready to be accepting some of the mistakes of ours. But today we have across the board acceptance that electronics is an area that we have literally gone out in terms of we depended everything on import. That is where the telecom revolution happened. It's good that because which you got a mobile penetration, internet, everything good. But now we decided that Electronics was going to for us. WTO is not as effective, which is a Damocles sword on the head of the country earlier. It has become ineffective, not as effective. So we are able to be incentivizing our Indian domestic industry by performance. We are not going to give a subsidy. You perform and we are giving you a support for it. So it is a 40,000 crore is what you already given for one set of the industry. And you are going to be listening to year over year in every budget in the next maybe few years, the targeted industry where we want investment and capacity building to be happening, government is going to be the handholder, which never happened in 75 years of independence of your country. Absolutely. Remember that. Whatever was done earlier. So similarly, having a bank for developmental bank, which we had been talking for a long time with the government, because the banking thinking of the country is that what is the life of a loan in India? It used to be 5 years, 10 years. But for infrastructure building, 25 years is the minimum that you need. Right. See, income tax may have a 10-year period for writing of the investment. But for you to earn for a larger investment of a road or a port, multi-billion-dollar investment for infrastructure creation. And Japan has gone to 40 years today, some of the countries. So we have already accepted that fact. So that is a development funding, which is a different thinking. So the moment we have this kind of a system created, we don't have to depend upon domestic funding. So these banking systems will draw upon the global funds available in a safe country and with the capacity building needed in which part of the world right now, where the political stability going to be prevailing. Post-China, it is going to be India. So we'll be attracting a lot more of international fund for the creation. So that's where the development system bank is supporting. We have got a dedicated corridor for freight already thought through. We are already going ahead with a lot more of gas pipeline creation. The terminals are getting ready. Tenders are already on for, wiring the country with gas. So a lot more is happening without we seeing it. I would say that today the government is very well aware of what needs to be done to develop the economy at a faster rate. Last point that I want to talk about this particular one is the capacities which are going to be created in the country in the wave which is going to be coming in are going to be not like the last one. The size, the economy of size of investment for each of the sectors are also going to be undergoing a planetary shift. It is not just 1.5 times more, 20% more, sorry. It will be 2x, 3x, 4x of the last cycle that you will be seeing. So ticket sizes of investments are going to be also going up as the cycle is going to be picking up going forward. So that's about it.
All right. So if I, collect some points from what you said. So you said last time it was about 2.5 states, which got together and did most of the Capex. This time it's widespread across the country, many more states participating, and the names that you took, UP and Telangana, AP, if I put together, I think it gives you another big market of maybe another 30-40 crore people, which could drive both consumption and investment together, which is a very, very important point. Secondly, as you said, we import a lot. When I looked up at the numbers, we import about $320 billion annually in terms of manufactured goods. And if we just maybe could manufacture 10% of that domestically, it translates to 2.5 lakh crores of domestic opportunity. So these are very big numbers. And as you said, the capacities are going to be multi-fold from where we stand today. One question which comes to mind is, Unni, what kind of resources do we require? As I said earlier, maybe I'll come back to PLI later on, and we'll also go back to what sectors could drive this. But let me, question you on a point on, do we have the financial resources for this kind of capacity? When we look at the government's budgetary resources, it has already gone through COVID and spent a lot of money reviving the economy. Plus, we are also talking about national monetization pipeline. And plus, we are also talking about using balance sheets of various PSU like NHAI and others. Do we have the capacity to finance this kind of a Capex boom?
The answer lies in what we have seen in the IPO. I don't want to use the word boom, but at least in the COVID period, the country and the world is still under the grip of a COVID. Tell me one IPO which got undersubscribed in the recent past of unknown entities, where this is an indication of the hope of the investor, and not one of them are bought over by LIC in advance equivalent, which used to happen in India, or maybe HNI is bought over. It's a marginal investor collectivity over there. And of course, I mean, the other systems put together. So it's an indication there is no lack of equity availability. But you're right in that the entire last cycle, which is driven on only one debt funding from the banking system, right, which is incapable, in my opinion, for the kind of capital formation needed, for the kind of capacities that we need to create across the board. We need to have other mechanisms. And I'm very happy to see that bond mechanisms have started happening in the country. Okay. And it has got a larger organization, because you can't be a debt from the bank oriented economic growth for the size of the economy that we are in. It is okay possibly for growing up to maybe $2.5 trillion. 3 to 5 and 5 to 10 will be needing more and more instruments to be utilized. And bonds are becoming, at least for the well-known groups, the people who have already proven their ability to be creating edifices, completing the project on time, and then having a repayment capability, they may not have to be depending upon debt alone. So bond is the next thing going to be evolving. And I am very hopeful that midway through the next cycle, we will have insurance also possibly coming into putting the funds over there, because that's the area where a lot of money would be available. And the most important thing, if you noted in the recent past, is it is not only the government monetizing, even the private investors are selling out their assets to international funds.
Right.
Today, you have got some of the largest pension funds of India, well ensconced in multi-billion dollars already invested, and many of them are currently in discussion with this. And you would find another major change is that well-known family groups who ran the company for 2 or 3 generations do not have any worry about handing over the entire organization to private equity fund, which means we are growing up. India is growing. So I am very confident about the fact that we will not be bereft of money, but not everybody will get money. Let's have the clarity. Sure. Last cycle, many who didn't deserve got money, and we created the banking crisis. So in the current one, there will be better scrutiny of who can do that and where to invest on that, and things will happen that way. And I'm very confident about it. The money will come in the right sectors. Yeah.
So if I pick up correctly, I think you mentioned that not only equity markets and the erstwhile support from the bank lending channel, but it will also be the bond market which will come in picture, right? Which will probably provide the much required financing for this cycle. That's, I think, a very interesting point. Charan, coming to you, we are going to discuss something which is very important, which is, let's say, China plus one. India, we've been talking about that India needs to create things which Indians consume, which we can export. We have to build capacities. And there is this whole COVID which happened over the last 2 years, and industry got a shock globally that it wants another supply chain partner, right? And where this China plus one thinking came. So one question to you is, how do you see this panning out? Is this a real thing, or it is just a flash in the pan? Are we ready to take up something which China leaves, or create new supply chains for the world?
Yeah, so I think what we see is that when we are talking about China plus one strategy, this entire thing started with, first US-China trade war. Yeah. And then COVID actually accelerated this phenomena in terms of corporates looking at China plus one strategy, because they wanted to diversify their supply chains. They had already seen a lot of disruptions, and they wanted a trade partner who can be more reliable in terms of the good manufacturing setup. What we are seeing is that government is also understanding that this is a lifetime opportunity which India is getting to develop its domestic manufacturing ecosystem. We are already seeing that there are a lot of import bans being put in by the government. There are tariff barriers being put in, and there is a performance-linked incentive scheme which is being brought in by the government. So performance-linked incentive scheme is going to be a game changer, because like Unni mentioned, it is not just a subsidy, but it is based on what is the performance which any company has. We saw the success in the mobile phone segment, and then there were multiple new categories which were introduced in the PLI scheme. And now we have almost on 13 sectors where PLI scheme has been rolled out. Right. We'll be seeing almost 1.4 lakh crores of Capex getting done related to PLI schemes. And just to give you another example, when we talk about, is there, lack of capital available in the country? Is private sector ready to do this kind of Capex or not? For solar PLI, there was a bid for 10 gigawatt of capacity, but the number of bids which came was for 55 gigawatt of capacity. So see the amount of interest which actually corporates also have in these kind of PLI schemes, that they are willing to commit to these capacities and generate this kind of an ecosystem in the Indian context.
All right, got that. What we've seen, that there are different sectors which are involved in this cycle. It's not a one-trick pony. You've got cement, you've got industrial consumption, you've got overall infrastructure boom, roads, ports, railways. So many sectors are involved in this whole Capex cycle, which do well at different points in time. So Unni, I want to come to you. Which other sectors do you think are right now well placed over the next few years, if we may say over the next 5 to 10 years, which could play a pivotal role and also gain a lot of traction, in the next 10 years? Just to give a data point, for example, in the cement sector, our volumes grew at about 7% CAGR between 05 to let's say about 14, and then since then it's grown only at about 1.5%, right? So we've come to 350 million tons or so annually in terms of production and demand. Which sectors do you think could do well, and what are those sectors?
I would talk from the ground level feel where things have already started happening. Charanjit mentioned about solar, or maybe the power sector, let me say that way. We have to be creating at least maybe 150 giga additionally in solar. Originally it was supposed to be 100 giga, then made 170 or 200, and we have put in just about 50 gigawatt equivalent capacity. So additional 150 is a major thing which will have to happen before 2030. Then only we'll be able to stand on with our commitment of COP21 Paris Agreement, which India will do that. So and I'm also giving an indicator and a pointer towards that. A commitment of $10 billion investment by the Reliance Group, which is doubled by Adani Group thereafterwards. And in that PV manufacturing, it's the largest investment in both of the Adanis. Already have a manufacturing plan. Reliance is going to start from scratch, and it is when Reliance say they want to do, they'll do it on time, and they have everything. And I know the kind of movement happening in both of them, and many more will get into. This is an indication that we are not going to be depending upon the international import. Otherwise, we are only importing predominant part of it. Only the steel was made in India. The panels were coming from outside. So this is going to be starting with the polymerization of silicon till the entire plant be built. So huge investment in capacity creation for the power equipments in the solar. The same thing happened in the last cycle for supercritical boilers and turbine happened in India. Now it is going to happen for inverter, the electrical control oriented, and the panel making, and then that being put into. So that is going to be a major thing which is going to happen. And that too, I'm talking about maybe a 8 to 9 year period of time. And in today's cost, you're talking about maybe a total investment nearly $80 billion. So that would be certainly leading to start with. Second is, Government of India had already made a plan for steel sector to go up from 130 million TPA to a 300 million TPA. Ideally, we don't need 300 million TPA, but again, make in India and make for the world. That is a thing which the undercurrents already happening in. But from there, they are having thicker green balance sheets currently available. It's almost like what happened to the cement industry. Though you mentioned about they only grew up by 1.5% on a CAGR, their balance sheets are very strong.
Right.
Same is the current condition, even the worst balance sheet 5 years back today. I'm not naming anybody. All of them are ready for investment. And I'm aware of the fact that on the drawing board and the discussion levels, all the Indian companies and the international companies like POSCO and ArcelorMittal who already come into India, and the Indian groups, including SAIL, are already drawing up plans for capacity increase. And I'm seeing it. It's also extending. So steel is not only the steel capacity. Sponge giant, there are 20 companies currently coming in and increasing their capacity early, which is around 100 to 200 tons per day to 600 TPD tons per day plans under ordering right now, and captive power for that getting ordered. Equivalent of that, I can see it happening in that one. So that is the second sector. Cement, of course, already all the people who told we will not create capacity, everybody is competing with each other. And luckily for them, most of them are going to be brownfield because most of them have got surplus land available. They've got limestone quarry available. They, in any case, are utilizers of coal, and coal sidings are available. You only need to strengthen it further. And there is no license required for setting up a cement capacity today, unlike what happened at the beginning of the earlier cycle. So that is the third one. Refinery sector, which we had been talking for a long time, 3 of them are already underway and already ongoing, even during the COVID period, excepting that maybe 3 or 4 months of the toughest time, ordering is happening. A lot of orders got placed without anybody reporting in the newspaper because people stopped reading newspaper in the beginning of the cycle. Otherwise, it would have been already there in the news. It's already on. So the oil and gas industry. So once you have refineries coming in, you will also have downstream various other industries getting capacity building. Chemical is another industry which I'm seeing a lot more is happening in that area. And food processing is, across the country. And one new item in the cycle, which is not there in the last, was about ethanol manufacturing, which is not there in the last one. Earlier, it was only the waste of the molasses from the sugar factory was used for making ethanol. Today, government is permitting sugarcane directly to be converted to reduce the diabetic problem of India, maybe ethanol and don't give sugar to the country. So investments are happening and each investments are very large in that. So these are some of them which I mentioned about, but we can have a detailed talk about. But to say that, identified, the industry is very clear in their mind what capacity to create, where to create is also happening. So it's going to be picking up now.
All right. So if I pick up these sectors correctly, it's industrial products, oil and gas, capital goods, all of them, chemicals, as you mentioned, even steel capacities and other metals, all of them, have a good runway ahead, which probably comes out from what you just said. One sector which probably I want to talk about, and we haven't up until now, is the real estate sector. It's been a very large contributor to India's growth always. Construction and real estate put together, it's upwards of 10%. Its contribution to India's GDP. Charan, coming to you, do you think there is a perceptible change in how this sector is performing? And is there a growth path ahead and which can play out through, let's say, an engineering revolution along with the sectors which Unni mentioned?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the real estate sector, the performance of the sector has been muted for last 7 to 8 years, and the reason for that is there were a lot of changes which happened on the ground, be it demonetization, RERA implementation, GST we have gone through. So a lot of those things impacted the performance of the real estate sector. Now, what we are seeing is definitely there's a good offtake which is happening because of the lower housing loan interest rates. Affordability has improved in the real estate sector. Additionally, what we are seeing is that the inventory levels, they are going down. As inventory levels are going down, and if we are able to sustain the demand, what we have seen in FY20 levels, what we'll see is that the inventory levels will come down to almost around 18 months, which was when we saw it as the historically low number. And it was at similar level what we had seen in the earlier start of the upcycle. So what we are seeing is that real estate definitely is making a comeback, and we have to now see that how we want to play it, either through the building materials or through a bucket approach of consumer electricals. So definitely real estate as a sector, we are seeing a comeback. Now, to the other point, what Unni also talked about in terms of the private capex, I just want to add some of the other trends which we are picking up in this segment. We are seeing that Industry 4.0, which Unni has been also involved in quite a lot in terms of the digitalization and automation of the industries. And this is a trend which is not only picking up in India, but it's a global trend. And what we are seeing is as India is becoming a factory for the world and trying to scale up its manufacturing capacities, this trend will pick up more pace. Another trend which we are picking up is on the data centers, which is, here again, we are talking in multiples. This industry will see 5x jump in the capacities by FY26 and will be almost to the tune of 75 to 80,000 crores of investments. So I think in this cycle, there are also a lot of new drivers which are emerging, while the three engines of government spending, private spending, and real estate, they are definitely coming back. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks for that. So I think there are so many sectors to talk about and so many areas, but let me pick a few. I think one of the clear trends that we've seen in the recent past, which is probably progressing very well, and I may touch some more sectors, but is the electrification of railways. How it has progressed at a very fast pace over a period of time. Do you think this trend continues, and what different levers will it throw going forward? Are there more sectors which are going to benefit from this? Unni, this question is to you.
Yeah, certainly we are seeing, since I sit on the board of a company which is also into railway electrification, I want to name that.
Sure.
We are seeing a lot of traction in that area, certainly. And I would say that with the part privatization of railways or participation of private industry coming into the railway business, starting with the building of the, only the rails were earlier built by private industry. Everything else was only government. Today, coaches, the modernization program, electrification is already picking up. A lot more tenders are coming in. And Indian industry, let me say, is also matured. There are more than, say, a couple of players already available. And with the international tie-ups, they have global standards available. You've seen how we have been able to increase the speed of the rail in the country. Right. And it is going to be, one is electrification. Second is also railway increasing the strength of our lines in such a way that average speed will get into triple-digit kilometers per hour. Why I said only triple-digit? Some places it could be even 200 average. Some places we may touch 300. And the ones which were the old slow will also come to a triple digit. So this will be meaning a lot more of investment related to that in this sector. And this time it will be a lot more of participation of the private industry going to happen, and not the limited private industry companies. There will be a lot more of them to happen in that. And I would also see one sector, since you mentioned about over here, many of the railway stations in India will also at least be handed over for operations the way right. the airports are being done. Plans are almost ready. Some of them are tried out and not making a big no, because it's when one difficulty in our country is that immediately there'll be resistance for it, even right. if you do it for good. So the government also, I really appreciate them that you have to do it below the radar, but a lot more of that is going to be happening. And I would say, give or take 10 years in India, our railways will become world class, the way it is already picking up. Yeah, but of course, crowds will be more than every country because we've got too many people. And that is an area where railway transportation is going to be again viable, and it will be able to compete against even normal transport. As the quality of the compartments increase, it becomes comfortable for you to travel. And when you are able to do a Delhi-Bombay in exactly 12 hours, or maybe Ahmedabad in maybe few hours, when you can go do your work and come back in the evening, this is going to be a new era, which is the kind of thing that is expected. Thank God. I would say that we thought through all of this and we are already making, in fact, if you read about it in the recent past, the Hyperloop, UAE was the first country to do that, but the report has come that maybe India will be the first one to try it out. So, right. See, since you're not built the infrastructure so much in the country, and we need to be building up a lot more, the modern techniques are going to come to India, and railways will lead in that, in my opinion. It will be one of them. Good.
Very interesting indeed. Charan, I want to come to you. As we said, the previous few cycles were more driven by, boilers, turbines, capital goods. A lot of that got built and utilized. Right now, we are talking about automation. We are talking about not only, let's say, greenfield, but we are also talking about brownfield expansions, also automation of existing industries. And when we speak to a lot of corporates, they talk about how almost every industry wants to automate. They want to increase the amount of robots they are using and automate their own supply chains and their own production processes. What kind of trends are available in this automation? What sectors are getting impacted? And how this whole engineering outlook is changing right now of what it was in 2010s and now in 2020s ahead?
Yeah. So when you look at automation and digitalization, these are two words being used by the industry globally. And this is not, something which is being pushed, but this is a need of the hour for all the industries. Now, why automation is required? Because one, it is providing us shorter time to market the products. Secondly, it is helping us improve energy efficiency. And if I have to give a statistic in terms of shorter time to market, it can reduce times by around 50%. Thirdly, if you look at these digitalization technologies, they're also helping in mass customization. Now, when you look at, one of the large AC manufacturer in India, they've set up the most, highly sophisticated robotic plant in India, which is the best in Asia. So what we are seeing is that already Indian entrepreneurs, already Indian manufacturing setups have started looking at automation and digitalization as a very key factor to scale up their manufacturing capacities. As a customer, our demands for products or SKUs are changing every season. That's where, the flexible manufacturing comes into picture. If we see, one of the large electric, motor vehicle company, they started, their capacities very recently and rolled out their, bikes also very quickly. They have started using the latest automation and digitalization technologies which are being offered by MNCs. What we see is that there is a requirement for these across industries. There are certain industries which are ahead in curve. in terms of automation. And there are, like, for example, oil and gas, they have been always ahead in the curve in terms of automating their processes. But digitalization is one thing which is now picking up, where we want to make the machinery more smarter. We want to have more predictive maintenance. We want to reduce downtime. And actually, COVID has accelerated these factors by 5 to 10 years. It could have taken much longer, but now because of COVID, people have seen the importance of remote monitoring, remote execution of projects, and automating more and more of their plants. So I think that is a trend which will catch on much more rapidly because of COVID. And to become a global manufacturer again, we have to have more automation in our plants.
All right. Uni, I want to
Sahil, I wanted to add just
Please.
to help Charan's point on that.
Please.
You know, one learning for Indian industry from China, when they really grew at a very fast pace, double-digit percentage of growth, and mass capacities created, they depended a lot on labor. And Chinese labor works like a robot. Indian labor doesn't work like a robot. They don't work in any case. They don't work like a robot in any case. Learning number one. And Chinese got a very bad name in the global market related to quality, which Charan mentioned about. Consistency in quality means automated lines. So in the last cycle, India focused a lot more on skill-intensive manufacturing. In the current one, it will be mass manufacturing, which is going to be happening. So the capacities, as I mentioned, is going to be global in scale, because India plus global, that's a capacity will happen. That cannot be managed by people. And two data points I want to give you, because I've done Industry 4.0 for the BRICS Business Council when I was chairing the skill vertical for that one. We did a survey of the BRICS countries related to robo penetration. And of course, globally, it is Korea leading the world. But China itself, that time itself had something equivalent to, maybe, I'm talking about in 2016, 35 robo per, I think, 1,000 workers in the sector. And we were not even 0.3 that day. And that too, thanks to automobile industry. So, Charan, the industry which is highly robotized and highly digitized is automobile already. Coming to this, India is currently struggling predominant part of the industry in lesson 2.0. So the transformation is from 2.0 to 3.0, and very few industries, and the new ones will always be going for 4.0. It's not a great news for workers equivalent to that. So this is the way everybody will automate, and I agree with them. This COVID is going to be making it, because hybrid working is going to happen in any case in the world. Even manufacturing can be remotely managed, which means machines will have an IoTization done for it. So it is going to be a great growth area. But one additional point which all of us forgot to talk about is, India will also create a lot more automation technologies by implementing it. And we may be the leaders in automating factories of the world in the future. That's another opportunity which is going to be available. Because even today, IT majors of India have already, we were the first to start talking about IoT, IIoT, and then vertical sectors. Most of the larger Indian, IT companies already have a vertical for it, and most of them are based in Europe and in America, because they know that is the market from where the knowledge has to be picked up, implemented in India, and become an implementer for it. So, what happened in ERP implementation, making the bottom line, top line, and bottom line of the Indian IT majors really rise up? In the current automation cycle, which is going to happen to our country and to the world, that's the next opportunity and growth driver for the IT industry also. At the same time, because we are talking a lot more of engineering, but they are also going to be partaking and growing in the India bargain.
Sure. Uni, you partly took away my question, which I was about to ask you only. Like in the last cycle, when China grew in terms of engineering, right? Our engineers were coding. We got a great IT revolution here. They were manufacturing. They got a great manufacturing revolution in China going on. But one of the key ingredients, if I may say, was the appreciation and collaboration of the international industry. It went in droves to China, got the R&D done, invested a lot. Do you think we are also going to get, or are getting, that kind of foreign commitment, whether when it comes to, let's say, engineering, manufacturing, and particularly some areas, for example, monetization of our assets in the infrastructure segment? Is there a international commitment to this sector? You will want to ask that, because when you look at even the investment markets, which I'll bring in the flavor right now, when we got such international commitment for India, our IT sector is one of the best performing sector, both in terms of economy and in terms of the investment market. So is that combination possible in this cycle for engineering?
It's a very complex question to answer in one word, but I can say that signs are already there. If one were to look at it, a good part of the global engineering majors, whether it is European or American, always had an anchoring of their R&D done in India, either in Bangalore or in Gurgaon or various other cities, or their own Indian subsidiaries were ensconced with the engineering side and technology development side. So that is already happening, but it will happen in a much larger way going forward. But the area that we have not really capitalized the way China could do that, China got technology, they never allowed any company to bring in their technology directly to their subsidiary in China or a joint venture in China. Technology had to be given to a design office owned by the government, who in turn made it usable for China and then gave it to multiple companies. So this is an area where India has not succeeded, not even done. But since I'm currently in the academy area, in the research area, I can confirm to you that our current rate of PhD, there is an indication of that one. See, our engineering colleges, IITs, were nothing but manufacturing factories for BTechs, and allowing them to be taking up jobs in maybe your area, in investment bank area, rather than doing engineering. So somewhere, a decade back, instruction was given by the government to at least IITs, major IITs, older ones. Now we don't want you to do that. Focus on research. I'm very happy to say 4 of our IITs today have got more PhD and MTech students than BTech students. And now it is percolating into all the NITs. Give or take, say, the average number of PhDs coming out of in India at good institutes, I mean, all put together is around, say, 18,000-20,000. ASEC is 150,000 of China per annum, or a 36,000 of America per annum. But the way the current the things are happening and the topics which they're taking, they are no more doing PhD to get a UGC scale salary. They're doing it for a patent to be created or to do their own startup on their own. That's the way it is. I am confident in that, but I don't want to combine with the cycle. It is an economic movement and that's needed. As the electronic manufacturing comes in, IoT start picks in, these are advanced levels of technology. So it will also have an impetus given to micro manufacturing in mechanical engineering, in every types of engineering, and boundaries are broken. Give or take a decade from today, India will be the epicenter for the newer technology creation. I mark my words on that one. Because any other country will have to try it out in countries like India only, because they don't need, developed world doesn't need capacity. Whereas this country needs capacity. China has already built. Yes. Japan is declining in terms of population. So here population growth will continue. Right. We can't stop it that way. Working population is there and consumption is going to be there. And whatever the latest, whereas earlier India always acquired a technology a step below the cutting edge. Today we are talking about cutting edge ahead of that. So give or take a time, because today an absorption capacity is getting created by the education institutions of the country. And give or take that decade plus, in my opinion, you will have the way Ericsson created the IT, this one, the communication technology, which China took over. Right. India will be the next one to happen with all the components being made in India. The way automobile industry picked up in India, because we protected them, supported them for years together. So today we are some of the best component makers in the world. And I don't have any hesitation telling we make some of the best cars in the world now. And we will be the best guy to design cars in the future. Same thing is going to happen in the conventional engineering area. And the movement is already on. And it is a irreversible movement. It's a knowledge movement, manufacturing movement, and then marketing also to pick up to the world. So it will happen.
Right. So if I pick up correctly, I think we have all the ingredients ready, all the conducive conditions ready, and we just need to cook a good dish here, if I may say so. Charanjit, coming to you, a very important segment of our talk. What are the most glaring opportunities from all the sectors that we spoke about in terms of investments? What shines bright to you when you look at all these things that we spoke about? Which are the sectors which jump at your face?
Yeah, so Sahil, when we look at our investment framework, what we try to do is, simplify these things by having subsectors where you have a good visibility for 3 to 5 years, which are the strong themes which are evolving, and we see that they can have a multi-year run, and also have certain sectors depending on their cyclicality, whether they're early, mid, or late cyclical, sectors. So what we have is a bucket approach where we try to bucket each of these segments into different buckets. First bucket which we have is a automation and digitalization theme, like I talked about. They have very core sectoral competence, be it for steel, cement, or process industries, which comes into picture when we talk about these companies. And again, a good runway for growth. And this is a need of the business. This is not something which has to be pushed onto the businesses. Second, in terms of fast-moving industrial goods. Now, these are more consumable products. And in any industry, whenever you are talking about manufacturing sector picking up, we will require these things because there's a faster replacement cycle and they tend to have a much better growth rate than the IIP growth rate historically.
Right.
Thirdly, it has to do with spending and more, desalination, water treatment across, industries. And thirdly, data centers, which I talked about. Next bucket is of the construction industry. When we're talking about such a big pickup in the infrastructure spending, we'll definitely see, pickup in roads, railways, and definitely, we have companies which are actually net cash companies in this bucket. Lastly, which we have consumer electrical space. When we are talking about electrification of the economy, it means that there'll be more and more, railways is already electrifying, which we are talking about, EV ecosystem getting built in the future. We are talking about data centers, more again, power intensive businesses here. So what we'll see is that again, consumer electrical, powers and cables, these will be, more in demand. And lastly, because of the real estate sector picking up, the next bucket is of building materials, where we see that you can play the real estate sector through the building materials as a category. So these are the buckets which we try to look at from a 3 to 5 years good visibility perspective.
Got that. Unni, you've been on the other side of the table, running successful businesses for a very long time. I want to understand from you, when the cycle goes right and the conditions are right, these companies in the engineering space particularly tends to do very well. And lately, we've been hearing from management commentaries words like capital discipline, focus on profitability, focus on scale. So give us some, let's say, blueprint of if the cycle goes right, what kind of growth numbers can we expect in terms of, let's say, top line or bottom line? What has been your experience and how do corporates focus on such cycles?
In this one, I would say as the cycle picks up, if you take maybe an average for maybe a 5-year or a 10-year kind of a period, because year over year it depends upon if there is a blip and something happening. So the light and medium engineering companies can always think about a double-digit percentage in that one, and the cap goods one, the good ones, can go to maybe upper teens. See, 1 year it may be flat, but the next year it could be 20, 30. Because I personally have experience of having run the company 40+% 2 years consecutively, and then maybe next year a flat one, then again going up by 20. So you take there, you'll have to be prepared for the chunky up and down portion. But you take an average. Cap good can grow at maybe a upper teen percentages. That's a reality. But light engineering will be steady. Light and medium will be steady. The engineering side would happen that way. I'm very confident. See, end of the day, if capacity is getting built, directly, indirectly, all the cap good companies will get benefited. And the component makers are the light engineering, which I mentioned about somebody who makes the components for the capital goods, a pump manufacturer or a motor manufacturer, cable manufacturer, or even steel will get impacted because specialty steel, stainless steel, so all of them will have a consistency in that. And not inconsistent, but big chunky growth will be for the caps good side. And this is the way it had been an experience in the earlier past. See, and please remember, and I repeat the word, it's a little more matured growth than an immature growth that we had earlier. Right. And you today have got managements, which is whether owners, proprietors, executive management team, all of them put together, having experienced a fairly faster growth and have faced a difficulty, learn from that. So it will be a little more knowledgeable growth going to happen. So profitability could improve, should improve. And like what Charan mentioned about in terms of automation always helps not only in quality, it's also bottom line. You don't need as much of physical hands to deliver. So there is a multiplier impact of each one of that. That will also help you.
Understood. Before I go to another very important question, Charan, I want to come to you and ask you, as Unni said, there is going to be chunky growth in pockets. There is going to be some bit of a consistent growth in other pockets. In terms of a theme, how do you marry these two together? Do you play all the sectors together, or it's like a more active kind of a decision making in such cycles?
Yeah, so it's where what you try to do is you try to look at, okay, where the opportunities are coming through, which sub segments will get benefit, and where all the capex is already picking up. So like we talked about, we are seeing that certain segments will start seeing the capex picking up much more ahead in the cycle, which are early cyclicals. So consumables will start seeing growth coming in at a much more faster pace, and even in the early in the cycle. Then we'll see the mid cyclical companies as we see grids getting built up or new plants getting built up. You will see demand coming in for different components, be it for the plant manufacturing equipment, for transmission equipment. So that is where we'll try to time and see which companies can capture that growth over the 3 to 5 years and are positioned with their technological edge as well as their manufacturing capacities. And I think last cycle has already shown us and clearly indicated that where the pockets are in terms of the growth, where the new capex is going to happen, and which companies can actually benefit from that capex. So in a cycle, what you would like to do is pick up all the winners, build those in the buckets in terms of core engineering, in terms of fast moving industrial goods, in terms of automation, and then try to play that as the cycle picks up, because you will not be able to time it. But as the cycle picks up, like Unni also mentioned, we'll see chunky growth rate. We'll also see certain segments showing sustained growth rate. But over the 3 years to 5 years period, you should be able to capture that across different pockets of growth which you are seeing. Yeah,
sure, got that. Only one question to you. We've discussed there are a lot of levers which are coming together. As I said, a lot of ingredients for a perfect recipe and also conducive conditions. But is there a cat lurking around which can come and spoil the party? What are the risks to our hypothesis? What do you think hasn't worked in last 7, 8 years or 10 years, and it can continue to not work and delay this whole revival that we are talking about?
First and foremost, in my opinion, is not economic reason, it is political. Because a global movement of politics where I would say that democracy versus other alternatives being, to be precise, an autocratic equivalent. Which one is going to be ruling the world in the next maybe century or maybe at least 4 to 5 decades? That has got to be settled or will be postponed. So if any settlement of that were to be happening, which means you got flashpoints of Taiwan, we got flashpoints of Indian borders on both West and East. West I am unduly worried about, but combination of that to happen. Or South China, 3 of the areas are the threat for the global economic movement, which will indirectly impact us also. And unlike in the earlier, skirmishes, India cannot be keeping away from that. Because we will be a targeted country because of our economic reasons only, not for political, much more there, because there will be reason for containment. Then how India is going to play, even if you play, nothing is going to be of a very long nature. That temporary blip could be there. So our political sagacity to ensure that we navigate through, there could be something wrong, and how we're going to be navigating that can make one difference. So far, everything is going on good for India, even if something were to happen. Even a threat is almost getting averted because of the grouping that's happening in the world, political grouping happening, and India has taken bolder steps of becoming a part of political grouping happening. So that is the point number 1 threat. But I can't say that nobody can predict it will not happen. That's number 1. Second is climate change related issues. Because end of the day, while you're investing a lot more, people are willing to look at India, international funds which are coming in and will continue to be coming in, and looking at India as a market, provided we are a supporter and a participant in ensuring that we limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degree. It may even become 1 degree in another, say, maybe 8 or 10 degrees, and that may put a lot of restraint on us. So our ability to be working towards a global goal, rather than a couple of countries who walked off from that in between and now re-entering equivalent. India cannot have that kind of a thing. That's something major thing, because at the end of the day, we are an underdeveloped country with a huge population, and everyone in the world knows that India has to be developing, and everybody wants a pie, small pie out of that. So globe is coming into that. But no one in the money, the pocket saving money, are not willing to be compromising on the climate change mitigation program. So India has got, whether political stability remains, changes happen in that, we got to stay put on that. All our investment should be conform into that ESG mode, which is very, very important. So that is the second one I see as a threat. Third is that technology revolution, which is going to be brought in by China, which may be far ahead of what is thought through by most of us. Will we be able to catch up with that to ensure that at a very fast pace? This is a technology is a risk for the country, because the development of the world in the current decade, it's already known to the world that even some of the most developed, technologically developed countries are left behind in the last recent, not post 2008, I'm talking about, the difficult time. China has really taken strides in that one. How quickly can India be catching up on the selected areas? Otherwise, we will be left behind. Because if they were to be bringing in something out of the world, especially advent of 5G happening, there will be application changes in a number of areas, starting with life to manufacturing to everything put together. In that, some of them will be able to catch up, but the important and very large ones, if you are unable to catch up, not be alone. In that, you asked the right question earlier. The grouping which is getting formed in the world to catch up with that, will we play the role the right way? That is a third one, I would say that. And the last one I will talk about is, India needs a lot more of investors beyond because last cycle, sorry to say that, predominant part of the investors were the same who remained in India for the past maybe few decades. So how many more new Indian larger investors who are done in the e-commerce area, maybe in the edtech area, to a certain fintech area, but in the core area where capacity building has got to be done with huger ticket sizes, how many more will come in? Because we can't have only the same level. And the banking system's growth, along with this, with the reforms done at a quicker pace. Please remember, a 5 trillion economy and a 10 trillion economy. It needs a banking system, not the way even today we are a controlled banking system. I'm not trying to say remove all the controls for it. It has to be regulated. But regulation should be with you can regulate, maybe a kite is regulated at a distance of a kilometer, but a cow is regulated with a rope in maybe how many meters? 10 meters.
10 meters.
Both are regulated. So we need a kite regulation rather than a cow. I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong word in that way. Let's say that a dog regulation. This one is the kind of thing that we need for it. So the moment that is done, because see, end of the day, the fundamentals of an economy is the banking system. And the economy is the core, is that center. So its ability to match up with the pace that we are currently talking about is much larger, faster, and we need to make it happen. So these are the things, in my opinion. I'm not worried about the small things. You may find 1 year having a problem, 2 years having a problem, but the cycle will be much longer in shape.
Sure. So 4 points that Unni mentioned is geopolitics or political is one, technology is other, climate is the other one, and lastly mentioned how quickly can we get new investors. So Charan, to you on this investment part, the percentage of investors holding these core sectors like engineering, they have declined rapidly. When we talk about investments today, people talk about fintech, as Unni also said, they talk about technology, they talk about new industries. Do you think investor interest will come back to this area? Are there enough opportunities?
Yeah, so if you look at, from investments perspective, definitely the biggest investments which are required on the infrastructure space. And what we see is that there's no dearth of capital. Capital is available. On the operational road projects, for example, if you see, we have been able to get long-term investors, pension funds who are investing in the operational road projects. They are not investing in under construction projects because there are certain issues which we saw in the last cycle. What government has done is actually they have been able to resolve certain of these issues so that more capital can be attracted to these sectors, which are more capital intensive. And we can also see churn of the capital. Now, there's also change in the mix in terms of how we are funding our infrastructure requirements. You can see that there's a long-term, low-cost financing which is coming from multilateral agencies like World Bank, ADB, or JICA. I'll give you an example. Now, we are building a Mumbai to Ahmedabad bullet train. That's a 1 lakh crores worth of project. 88,000 crores of financing is coming from JICA as a soft loan at 0.5% interest rate. with 60 years of repayment time frame.
Right.
So we are also seeing, like when we talk about a new developmental finance institution, which is already been passed by the government, which they are capitalizing at 20,000 crores and will be able to fund assets for 5 lakh crores. So it means that government is thinking on the ways in terms of generating avenues for raising finances. There is a lot of interest from global pension funds, from global multilateral agencies who want to fund these assets. The mistakes of the past in terms of how we were structuring our contracts, how we are providing the exit to the investors, they have been also sorted out to a large extent. We have also seen the emergence of InvITs, infrastructure investment trusts, which have become a very good vehicles in terms of moving our operational assets and churning our capital. So that is again getting more prominence among the investors. So I think we have made a lot of changes to all this aspect, and financing is available now to the sector.
Sure. That's a great point. So let me come to the closure of what we said, and I would invite any closing comments from Unni. What do you think is the overall takeaway from this cycle, and how should we holistically, in a just short, how should we look at this, in terms of concluding with what we discussed today?
I am seeing all positive signs because the fear of COVID has moved out of the investor mind and the operating management mind. So that is that fear is already gone. We need to accelerate a lot more of the actions, and many who are thinking marginally will have to take geometric progressional thinking, which I see in many groups today. I mean, it's all mega investments that are there being spoken about and talked about, and even the central system of the government, and even majority of the larger states of the country who are wanting to be investing are also getting their drawing board very clear. And see, one of the greatest things that I've seen is that land bank availability with the governments and infra building done in anticipation of investment happening, not in terms of India does the other way earlier. So put together, the signs are very positive. And I would only request that to my colleagues from the industry that you have the largest emerging market available, and it is up to you to build the capacity. And for that, as we discussed in detail, fund and money availability will not be a problem. Yeah, do it with the right justification, scientifically. And when you're doing it, go for the best in the world and don't look at the ticket size going up or down, payback period increasing by a couple of years. If you build the right one, you will not only build for India, you will build for the world. Because the world is going to look up to India to supply technology, supply wares, goods, and the services. So that's my take on that. Sure. And it will be a positive cycle. Yeah, and it's not like going to be a short-lived cycle. Even if there is, my opinion, that another some skirmish, war, or even economic downturn, like the way Lehman happened, nothing to worry, because that will also have a time frame of a negative cycle of maybe few years, 4 or 5 years. But the pilot thinking that this is a goal at which we are heading for, 5 trillion, 10 trillion, and then into 20 trillion, kind of a thinking can be there for anybody who's creating capacity in the country. We are the largest market developing in the world is going to be this country.
Understood. Thanks for that. So what I recollect and understand from our conversation today is that over the last many years, we've done like small 1% improvements in so many areas. Now they are coming together. It's snowballing into a factor which can roll on for maybe next 5 to 10 years. This is what I pick up from what Unni said, what Charan said. And I think this is an opportunity for which we have to keep our mind open. There have been big investment performances from many sectors, but I think this is one which has many levers and which can work very well over the next 5 to 10 years. So I think this is it from our end today, from the evening today. Thank you very much for joining in to all the participants, and a big word of thanks to Charan, big word of thanks to Mr. Unnikrishnan for coming in today and giving your valuable time. Thank you. Thanks a lot to both of you. And I hope to see you again and we discuss some when things are even more brighter than they are today. Thanks a lot. And thanks for joining in.
Thanks, Sahil. Thanks, Unni. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. With this,
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.